Did I ever tell you how lucky you are? By Dr. Seuss. Read aloud by Big Papa Scott. When I was quite young and quite small for my size, I met an old man in the desert of Dries, and he sang me a song I will never forget. At least, well, I haven't forgotten yet. He sat in a terribly prickly place, but he sang with a sunny, sweet smile on his face. When you think things are bad, when you feel sour and blue, when you start to get mad, you should do what I do. Just tell yourself, Ducky, you're really quite lucky. Some people are much more, oh, ever so much more, oh, muchly, much, much more unlucky than you. Be glad you don't work on Bungle Bun Bridge. That they're building across Boober Bay at Bum Ridge. It's a troublesome world. All the people who're in it are troubled with troubles almost every minute. You ought to be thankful, a whole heaping lot, for the places and people you're lucky you're not. Just suppose, for example, you live in Gazat and got caught in the traffic on Zot Highway 8. Well, suppose, just for an instant, you lived in Gazaire, with your bedroom up here and your bathroom up there. Suppose, just suppose, you were poor Herbie Hart, who has taken his thromdambulator apart. He never will get it together, I'm sure. He never will know if the gick or the gore fits into the scrux or the snux or the snore. Yes, Ducky, you're lucky you're not Herbie Hart, who has taken his thromdambulator apart. Think they work you too hard? Think of poor Allie Sard. He has to mow the grass in his uncle's backyard, and it's quick-growing grass, and it grows as he mows it. The faster he mows it, the faster he grows it. And all that his stingy old uncle will pay for his shoving that mower around in the hay is the piffless pay of 2 duklas a day. And Allie can't live on such piffless pay. So he has to paint flagpoles on Sundays in Garoos. How lucky you are. You don't live in his shoes. And poor Mr. Bix. Every morning at 6, poor Mr. Bix has his borfin to fix. It doesn't seem fair. It just doesn't seem right. But his borfin just seems to go slump every night. It slumps in a heap, sadly needing repair. Bix figures it's due to the local night air. It takes him all day to unslump it, and then the night air comes back and it slumps once again. So don't you feel blue? Don't get down in the dumps. You're lucky you don't have a borfin that slumps. And you're lucky, indeed, you don't ride on a camel. To ride on a camel, you sit on a whammel. A whammel, you know, is a sort of a saddle held on by a button that's known as a faddle. And boy, if your old whammel faddle gets loose, I'm telling you, Ducky, you're gone like a goose. And poor Mr. Potter, T-crosser, I-dotter. He has to cross T's and he has to dot I's in a I and T factory out in Van Nuys. Oh, the jobs people work at. Out west near Hotcht, where Hotcher bee watcher. His job is to keep both his eyes on the lazy town bee. A bee that is watched will work harder, you see. Well, he watched and he watched, but in spite of his watch, that bee didn't work any harder. Not my watch. Then somebody said, our old bee watching man just isn't bee watching as hard as he can. He ought to be watched by another hotcher. The thing that we need is a bee watcher. Well, the bee watcher watched the bee watcher. He didn't watch well, so another hotcher had to come in as a watcher. And today all the hotchers who live in Hotch are watching on watching the watcher who's watching that bee. You're not a watcher, you're lucky, you see. And how fortunate you're not Professor DeBreeze, who has spent the last 32 years, if you please, trying to teach Irish ducks how to read Javanese. And think of the poor puffing Pooglehorn players who have to parade down the Pooglehorn stairs every morning to wake up the Prince of Pooboken. It's awful how often their poogles get broken. And, oh, just suppose you were poor Harry Hadow. Try as he will, he can't make any shadow. He thinks that, perhaps, something's wrong with his giz. And I think that, by golly, there probably is. And the brothers Bazoo, the poor brothers Bazoo, suppose your hair grew like theirs happened to do. You think you're unlucky? I'm telling you, Ducky, some people are muchly, oh, ever so muchly more unlucky than you. And suppose that you lived in that forest in France where the average young person just hasn't a chance to escape from the perilous pants-eating plants. But your pants are safe. You're a fortunate guy, and you ought to be shouting, "How lucky am I?" And speaking of plants, you should be grateful gladish you're not Farmer Fackenberg's 17th radish. And you're so lucky you're not Gunky Gown, who lives by himself 90 miles out of town, in the ruins of Ronk. Ronk is rather run down. And you're so lucky You're not a left sock, left behind by mistake in the caverns of Croc. Thank goodness for all the things you are not. Thank goodness you're not something someone forgot and left all alone in some punkerish place like a rusty tin coat hanger hanging in space. That's why I say, Ducky, don't grumble, don't stew. Some critters are much, much, oh, ever so much, much, so muchly, much, much more unlucky than you. The end. Please like and subscribe, and check out the gifts in the description.